Hey, Kendra, welcome to the podcast.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me, Cynthia. I'm so very excited to be here.
Yes, me too. I've been totally girl crushing your Instagram, and all your reels are they're hilarious. They make me laugh. I just want to see your face. It's like she's doing the real stuff. Good.
It's so funny. Because I've never been one for TikTok, and I was kind of like, I don't know how to use these reels, but they really bring out like the comedian in me that I didn't know that was there. It just hasn't really come out in like a business way. So I'm like, I'm down with these reels.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, there's so many of those pointing ones, but for some reason they're very entertaining. And so I think that like helps because it
Thank
makes it
you.
fun to watch.
Totally. Sometimes you just gotta be there to entertain, right?
Right. Yeah. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to my audience?
Sure. So I am an online business mentor, online business strategist for health and wellness coaches and practitioners. Been doing that for a few years now. I started out in 2013, I believe, as a functional health coach. Grew that business, mostly helping women restore their energy levels. And then, just kind of had a lot of success in business and just saw that a lot of my like friends online who had businesses and colleagues were just really struggling. So they sort of started reaching out to me to ask for like mentoring and consulting. And then I just was like, oh, I like marketing so much more. This is so much more fun. And I realized that what I loved about my business was the business building side of things. So I transitioned over in 2018, and that's what I've been doing ever since.
I love that. And I think it's so needed because, as you
Mhm.
know, I also specialize in health and wellness. And it's just a really different industry, even if you
Yeah.
compare it to like a mindset coach, right? If you
Yeah.
compare like a mindset coach to a nutritionist or
Mhm.
anybody who's doing like holistic services or like actual medical services,
Yeah.
and it's just such a different way that you need to market and share and sell. And so that's why I got you on here, because I think that you have a lot to share. So why don't we just dive in? My first question
Sure.
is, we're going to talk about sales calls specifically,
Mhm.
because a lot of these businesses, they're having to get on a call. Now it's not always a requirement, right? There's a lot of ways we
Yeah.
can sell, but what do you notice are kind of like the top parts of the selling process, specifically for the sales call, that's
Mhm.
different for a health and wellness business if we compare it to like a coaching or even someone who does like technical services like me,
Yeah.
right?
Well, I think the biggest difference is, I mean, what we're selling as health coaches, right? Because we're selling a better quality of life, we're selling better health. And so the people who you are selling to, who might be following you on social, who you're hoping to get onto a sales call, like it's a very personal thing, right? Obviously, if you're just selling like tech services, it's just like, okay, I want to know if this system can help me get this result. But with health, it's very personal, often embarrassing. So I think there's a sensitivity and
Yeah.
an empathy that really has to come to how we sell on sales calls, and just selling in general because of what people are struggling with. Like, if you're niching in infertility, I mean, that's a topic that a lot of women aren't comfortable speaking about with not even like their friends and family, right? Same with like IBS or like diarrhea. Like people don't always want to just be super open books about that. So I think there's a certain level of sensitivity and empathy that comes to selling. And I think, for health and wellness coaches who are doing sales calls, there's sort of like two ways in which we sell, which is indirectly through social media, and podcasts, that sort of thing, all our content, but then directly on the sales call. So there's always got to be that lead up, that where you're providing value, you're showing up for your people, you're constantly reminding them that you have this program and it's awesome and that they should jump on a call with you. But I think also because what we're selling requires so much commitment on the part of the client and dedication, like maybe what we do differently than other industries is we really have to focus on qualifying the person. Because if they are not ready to do the work, to be committed, to be dedicated to your process, they're not going to get the results. And that's going to be shitty for both them and you, right? You're going to feel like you suck. You're gonna be like, I'm a bad coach. I can't get this person the result. They're going to be like, I wasted my money. This isn't worth my time. I'm not getting results. And then it just feels really gross. So that
Absolutely.
qualifying piece is very important.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Like before getting someone on a call, what would you recommend should be like some qualifiers that
Mm,
like should be in place? Because ideally, what would be nice is when we get on the phone with someone, they're kind of like sold on us to some
yeah.
extent, and then the phone conversation is just those little details about your process or just to
Mhm.
get to know you like a little bit more. But yeah, what would you say would be like some good qualifiers like pre-call that someone could put in place?
Yeah, so I think there's a few things you can do. And I mentioned this earlier, obviously, like showing up regularly, being consistent on social media, like showing your personality, pulling all your free content from your paid content, and then constantly seeding in that you have a program. Like if we use fertility as an example, maybe you have like the fertility fix 101 program or whatever you're going to call that. And every time you're sharing content, you're like, yeah, this is actually from module 5 or part 5 or phase 5 of my infertility Fix 101 program. So people always know it's there.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's that indirect selling that really starts to qualify people because they really start to see your vibe. And it usually takes a long time for someone to come into contact with you and then be ready to jump on a sales call with you. Now, the other thing that's really important for qualifying, and this is a bit more indirect as well, is how you position that call. Because there's a lot of coaches out there who are saying free consult, free call, right? It's not a coaching call. That's not the purpose. It's not an opportunity for people to pick your brain. And this is what happens a lot with coaches is they get these people on calls who are just looking for free information. And you're not going to be able to sell that person because they're the wrong fit right off the bat. So we're not selling a free consult, a free call, a free health history, a free coaching session. That's not what that call is. I like to call the call, a qualifying call because you're qualifying the person and you want to make it really clear. Like this is a call for me and you to get to know each other and see if working together feels like a fit and if you're a good fit for this program of mine, right? That will really sort of disqualify a lot of people right off the bat who are looking to just pick your brain and get that free information because that's not going to sell anyone. The whole purpose of the call is to determine like, is this person someone who I can help? Right? Is what they're looking for something I can offer? And are they going to be a good fit for working with me? Because if they're not, then they shouldn't be on that call.
Mm-hmm. So do you
Right.
think they should even like the whole consult call thing is like a strategy sometimes to get clients? Do you think
Mhm.
people should offer anything where they're giving something for free? Like I think the issue with those is sometimes it's hard to put a boundary around that
Mhm.
because someone goes in and they ask you and they've got like your program, they're asking you all these questions and you're giving them all your answers and then it's done. And then that's why they wouldn't go ahead and hire you. Right.
Right.
So, but do you think there is any benefit in having some sort of free call or something like that where you're exchanging information?
Well, I think you want to have, like, I always recommend that people offer their call complimentary, like for free, especially newbies. You can start charging down the line when you're getting booked up and you're developing that wait list. But when you have very limited experience with sales calls, you really just want to get as many people on the phone as possible so you can
Mm-hmm.
practice, right?
Right.
But I think it's still very important to show people and tell people, like, this is not a just picking of the brain, right? And ultimately you might get people like that
Yeah.
totally happens, but it really comes down to how you show up on the call because you really need to be in control on the call. And I'm sure people in the audience have had the experience where like the sales call just runs away with them. The other person like has the bigger energy, they take over the call and they're like talking and talking, and then that other, you as the health coach, you kind of just don't take back control of the call. And that's when something like that will happen. And it will happen, especially in the beginning.
Yeah.
And as you get more on point in your marketing and, when your niche is really clear and your messaging is very clear, you will just naturally attract better people onto that call. But in the beginning, when that stuff is unclear, because everyone has to start somewhere, like, yeah, you're going to get people who are really just trying to pick your brain, even though you've said so many times, like, this is just a conversation to see if it's a good fit. Ultimately, that will happen. But I don't think people can get so much free information from you just based on your content. If you are
Right.
doing your due diligence and like showing up on social media, wherever that is, your website, however you share content, and you're being consistent, you're giving that information. I mean, that's the free value that you're giving them, right? And them to come on the call should be because they're curious about taking that a step further.
Yeah, so you can send them that information before, like if someone wants to get on the phone and you're like, look, like these calls are only for this. Here's
Yeah.
this is a great blog post that I think would help you or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Or something else I've done is like, I'll really be clear, in a nice way from the beginning, like this call is only 15 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever. And something else that might help some people is actually writing down like what you're willing to talk about and what you're not
Mm-hmm.
willing to talk about. So maybe
Yeah.
they start asking you some specifics about your process. And if you just can be helpful on a sheet of paper, say like, that's part of my process. You can find out more information on this page, right? Or
Yeah.
like you just have like a little bit of a script so that you're practicing those boundaries, which it's totally true at the beginning. You don't have those boundaries. You don't know you're practicing.
Yeah. And something I've done, like, because I get, at this point in my business, I get a lot of people like asking me questions, and I like to be available to people. So I do a weekly Q&A call where I answer people's questions. So if people are asking me a bunch of questions through like direct message on Instagram, and they're like, hey, would you hop on a Zoom call with me so I can ask you some questions? I'll just say, hey, let me know your questions here and I'll answer that on my Tuesday Q&A, right? That can be a good way to feel like you're not just being like, fuck off, I can't help you. You're still like supporting them, but you're showing them that like, yeah, I'm not going to hop on a Zoom call and give you free information because I don't have
Yeah.
time for that.
No, and I think if you did hop on the Zoom call, they'd be like, oh, she's so available. Like, is she really that expert? Right. So it's kind of like this weird situation where
Yeah.
you need to put yourself in that, like you need to just create those boundaries and put yourself in that expert
Mm-hmm.
place, and then treat people nicely, obviously, but create like a container or a space. Like it could be a Facebook group. I love your Instagram Q&As. I watch them
Oh, thank you.
as well. And there's so many ways, like it could be through a podcast. It could even be like a blog post. You could
Exactly.
write down the questions and then you could reshare them, right? And that could
Mm-hmm.
be like a page of all the questions you've ever gotten.
Yeah, like an FAQ page
Yeah,
for
a
people.
very
Yeah.
long
And
one.
so I think it's just really important because we don't, our time is our most valuable asset, right? And in the beginning, as new business owners, it's a very scarce resource, time, right? Because we're trying to do all these things, we're wearing all the hats. And so it's really important to have boundaries around that and not be taken advantage of, because it doesn't feel good when you think someone wants to work with you and really they just want to like get the information.
Yeah, it
And,
feels like they're using you.
yeah, like I hate when people
Oh.
are like, hey, I'll buy you a coffee if you let me pick your brain. I'm like, really? $5, buy me a fucking coffee to pick my brain? Like, no. No.
Yeah, no, I mean, I actually have picked my brain calls and it's
That's
for
cool.
that. But I don't put them out there unless it's something specific and I feel comfortable.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's different people, and depending on how busy you are, what you have going on in your life, you might or might
Mhm.
not offer that sort of thing.
Exactly.
Um, so at a high level, if we're looking at the sales call, what would you say are like the different components? If a sales call was like a sandwich, I'm hungry. What would you say would be like, maybe, I don't know if a sandwich is a good analogy, but maybe you have a better analogy for your sales call process.
Yeah, I actually have like, I'm happy to share a bunch of steps with you. It's kind of like, it's like a double, triple, quadruple cheeseburger style sandwich. But um, did you want me to walk through those? I think that would probably be helpful.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay. So the first thing that you want to do with a sales call is you want to like prepare to lead, right? Because you do want to be in your best power. Sales calls require a lot of energy. So it might work for you to like have like certain days of the week or times where you're like, this is when I take sales calls, and to block out a lot of time prior to the sales call, whether that's 15 minutes, 30 minutes, or even more. Go for a walk, do a meditation, like have a snack, whatever it is, because I don't think it will serve you to be really rushed and jumping into a sales call, because you want to be like in your best power, because this is like for a lot of us the biggest money making activity that we're doing, right? So you want to prepare to lead, whatever that looks like for you. When I used to do a lot of sales calls, I would do a walk. I'd go outside, connect with nature, come back and be ready for the call. And the other thing is to be prepared, right? Because there's nothing worse than coming on a call when you've had prior interaction with someone, but you don't remember because you didn't do your research. And they're like, oh yeah, like when we talked on Instagram, and you're like, oh, what? Oh crap. And that doesn't make the person feel good, right? Because they're getting ready to share their personal health information with you. They probably have not done this before. They might be feeling a bit vulnerable, a bit uncomfortable, a bit nervous. So you want to make sure that you make them comfortable by, making sure you haven't had any prior interaction with them. And if you have, you can mention that, and that will usually put people at ease. So I find just like that preparation period is really, really important. The next thing, and this is, I find really important as well, is make the connection, right? And if that is that you've had prior interaction with them, then be like, oh yeah, we talked on Facebook. But if you've not had prior interaction with them, try to find something you have in common with them. Everyone has social media. You can usually creep social media, see where they live, see where they're from, just try to keep it casual in the beginning. Because again, people are nervous, they're uncomfortable. Maybe they've never done this before. So you want to put them at ease. And if all else fails, I just feel like talk about the weather. How's the weather where you're at? Is it hot? Is it warm? Like whatever that is, I find that little connection piece can go a long way. And then this is where people get really caught up, is then usually they just let the person start talking, like, okay, so why'd you book the call with me today? And then they just start going on, which is fine. But I find it really helpful if you set an intention and you just say, okay, so welcome, Jane. I'm so glad you're here. This is how the call is going to go today. My intention is to learn more about you, the challenges you're having with your infertility or whatever your goals. And I want to ask you some additional questions based on, if you had an application. And I just want to learn like where you are, where you want to go, and if I can help you get here. And if I can help you get here, I'm going to explain what I have to offer, and we can both decide if working together feels like a fit. So right off the bat, like you're telling them like how the call is going to go. Again, that helps put them at ease. That helps you take kind of the power position, not in a gross way, in like a good power way, right? And then you're telling them
safe.
that like,
You feel
you feel
safe when
safe.
someone does that. Yeah.
I think so too. Yeah. And then you're also telling them that if I think I can help you, then I'm going to offer you something. Right. So you're telling them that like, I'm going to be like selling you something basically. And so it's not like surprise, buy my program. Like they know that if it feels like a fit, you're going to offer that to them. So I think that can be really helpful. And then I think the rest of the call, or like the majority of the call after that, is you're learning and listening, right? Yeah. Like listening to what they're saying, figuring out what they actually want, figuring out like what the problem is, and determining, can I help them? Because with health and wellness, sometimes we get people who are looking for something that's outside our scope or we can't offer. They're like, I'm looking for diagnosis. I'm looking for specific, recommendations based on my diagnosis. And you're like, okay, like I'm going to refer you to a doctor because this isn't within my scope. So I think that's really important as well, as like truly listening to the person and hearing their story, but also with the intention of figuring out like, is this someone who I can actually help?
I love that. Yeah. I think a lot about how it's kind of like dating, you go in, you've got something to offer and you're totally grounded in that. And you're like rocking your power, your whatever. And then, but you're also getting to know the other person, and you're building together this potential possibility of working together. But you can't really know that until you get to the, maybe to the end of the call or whenever. Maybe, from the beginning, some clients are like good fit and you just know it. But that makes it more fun instead of like this serious thing, right? It's like, because otherwise it's like, oh, I have to sell this person. Like, and it's like, no, like just get to know them and listen to their issues and connect with your own like want and desire to help them, and see if there's like this possibility to meet them in that need, in that problem.
Yeah, I agree. And something that might help people too, I call it like serve first, sell second. Like try to come at it that like, I'm just here to serve this person, and I'm here to find the best possible outcome for this person, even if it's not working with me. Right. It's like that detachment. And I think that is something that people can maybe meditate on or think about when they're preparing for the call, is to try to detach and take away the emotional attachment, because it's hard for newbies who are like, I just need to make money. But that's kind of a dangerous perspective to have, because you might end up selling someone into your program who know internally is actually the wrong fit.
Mm-hmm.
And so just knowing that, like, I'm just going to try to find the best outcome for this person. And that might be that I tell them they need to go see a different type of practitioner, but that's okay because I'm here to serve.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, I guess the other thing I remind myself is like, I wear all these hats in my business, and like the salesperson hat, like
Mhm.
if you think about even in a corporate landscape, salespeople sell every day to a lot of people. It's like all about volume. And
Yeah.
so for us, it's hard because a lot of the times our sales calls, obviously we might have a lot going on, but each one is so precious, especially at the beginning. It's like an
Yeah.
amazing jewel opportunity that you want
Yeah.
to just take advantage of. But you're so right, because if you do, if you do decide to work with someone who isn't a good fit in the long run, it does end up, not always, but sometimes it can cause more grief than,
Mm-hmm.
it's not profitable, right? From many different points of view. So if you put your sales person hat on and you think about it from a detached way, which is so hard as the business owner,
Yes,
because I'm
for
so,
sure.
like, personally, I find I'm so passionate about what I do. I'm like, I want to help this person. I'm going to find a way to help them. And, but yeah, if you think of it, like, how could I help them? Maybe it's through a podcast episode, or maybe it's
Mm-hmm.
through a referral, or passing it on to a colleague who has a personality that might be better for them. Thinking about it like that is a lot better. Although hard.
Yeah, and I mean, you're right. It is so hard because we are passionate. We want to help, but there's a big difference between like trying to save someone versus trying to serve them and guide them. And I
Yeah.
think this is a trap that a lot of health coaches fall into. Like they want to help so bad that they're trying to like save this person, but like that person has to save themselves, and you're just there to kind of show them the way. And
Yeah.
so it's really important on a sales call that you do detach, even though it's difficult, especially in the beginning when, like you said, you feel like you have this amazing opportunity and you could help this person and get a client. But I think a lot of people have had the experience of taking on someone who was not the right fit, and how, ultimately in a lot of situations, it's just really soul sucking and
Mm-hmm.
frustrating for both parties, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Mhm.
Do you have any specific recommendations for someone, again, kind of on the same line of conversation? You have your goals on one hand, you have like your revenue goals, right? And
Yeah.
the numbers, and then you also see your sales calls coming up and the leads. And so sometimes I think I definitely made this mistake. I start to I'm like, I could fit this person and make this goal, which I
Mhm.
don't know if that's necessarily bad, but sometimes again, we put ourselves in this position where we're fitting a square peg in a round hole sort of thing. Do you have any recommendations on how to like detach revenue goals with sales calls and leads and like conversations with potential clients?
Yeah, I think it can help people to just have a goal beyond revenue, right? Like obviously money is really important and we have to value money as entrepreneurs or we're probably not going to make it. But I think connecting to a bigger why always helps. And I mean, that helps for a lot of things because it is really a roller coaster. And um, just knowing that I'm here to serve and I'm here to, whatever your bigger why is. I'll just give you an example of what my bigger why is, because I truly believe that we need a shift in global consciousness and collective consciousness on the planet right now. And I think the way to that is for people to have full body sovereignty of their health and to stop looking outside themselves for something or someone to fix them, because I believe people all have it within. And I believe that that's what health coaches empower people to do. So I believe that by empowering health coaches, that will empower, body sovereignty in the general population, which will shift global consciousness, which is a crazy thing, but that's
Mhm.
my big kind of intangible why. And anytime I'm feeling oh, I need to make more money, or I need this, or I'm feeling down because of this, I just try to connect back to that and be okay, even if I help someone who doesn't give me money, I'm still technically moving towards that goal, that big
Yeah.
intangible goal that I don't know if I'll ever know if I've contributed to, but I think that can really help in the beginning, is just having a reason why you do this beyond just the money,
Hmm.
even
Yeah.
though it's hard in the beginning when you want the money.
Right. Yeah, it's a constant detachment process for sure.
Yeah.
All right, so last question here. So if there's, probably a lot of people listening to this and it's very helpful, and there's someone who's wondering, how do they discover their own personal style with selling, because we know there's different types of, we've all had that experience. There's, either with either a sales call, but also even sales pages and all sorts of sales tactics. How can someone find a way that is really part of, their brand, part of their personality? It just feels like a service-based action.
Yeah, I would just say practice in a lot of ways, just doing them enough times, because it is going to be awkward in the beginning and you're going to feel weird and you're going to feel uncomfortable and you're going to get rejected a lot and all of that. But like the more you do sales calls, the more comfortable they get and the more you can just feel like you can be yourself, right? Because truly, if people are connecting with you online and they end up on a sales call with you, they're connecting to some part of your personality. And you want that to carry through onto the call, right? Like you want people to say, oh, you're just like you are online, like you are on the Zoom call. Like that's a great compliment. But that is something that doesn't come in the beginning, right? Because there is that level of uncertainty, discomfort, not quite knowing how this whole call is going to go. And I think just practice will help people come into their own personal style. I don't think you can just like be like, this is my personal style and I'm going to do this. Right. So I think too, just, I'm a big fan of tracking as well, right? Like tracking your close rate and trying to figure out like, okay, which calls went really well and what was it about that call that went really well? Because that can help you figure out like what's working and what isn't. And I just want to throw it out there that like a good close rate in the beginning is like 25%. So that's like 75% rejection. So if you're getting rejected a lot, it's part of it and it's normal and it's okay. And it's also why it's hard to build a business.
Yeah. What I used to do, now I don't do this as much. Maybe I should go back, but I used to actually celebrate my rejections.
Oh, that's cool. I love that.
I would actually like give myself a little star every time it was part of, I have to give credit to one of my first coaches. Her name's Tiffany Hahn, and she had a program called 100 Rejection Letters. And the objective of the program, and this is still around for those of you, it was like to get at least 100 rejections in a year. So it was interesting because I think we don't want the rejection, but at the same time, having those numbers, it's just like a numbers game. Like a certain amount of rejections is going to equal a certain amount of successes. And you can look at like, I don't know, basketball, like Michael Jordan, how many shots did he take and how many did he make? And it's just,
I love that.
Yeah. Like no one teaches that in school.
Amazing. It's amazing because it's so true. Like people, no one likes rejection, right? Like when I think of being rejected, I think of like being dumped, where you're just like, oh, I feel so crappy about myself. This guy doesn't like me or whatever. But it's so a part of the entrepreneurial journey. And it's especially a part of the sales call journey. And is that you do get rejected a lot. And that's, again, why it's hard, but you also have to, that's that whole embodiment of detachment, right? Because when you get rejected, it doesn't mean anything about you. It doesn't mean you suck or that you're bad. It means you're just learning or that person just wasn't the right fit. And that's okay too. And you can get your sales call rate above 25%. Like I think you can get it plus 50%. And I've had sales call rates of 80% at times when my marketing was really on point. So, at some point you can get more yeses than nos, but you're still going to be getting rejected even as like the best salesperson on the planet.
Yeah. I like just thinking of the sales call as part of that process of getting to know your style as well. And just getting out there and learning and also hearing, like sometimes sales calls are also interesting to hear about objections, common questions. And that sometimes, you get inspired to create content. At the beginning, one of the objections that triggered me so much with SEO was SEO takes time. And I couldn't find a way to get around that because it was just, I don't know, it just triggered me for my own personal reasons. And so I ended up like diving headfirst into that objection. I created a podcast episode, a blog post, and now it doesn't trigger me. And it's like, okay, that was like an opportunity to go to that place. And now it's like, I have no problem if people ask me that, I can answer it and I love it. And I love educating people on it. But that's part of the process of, you have to go through that in order to resolve it, I guess.
Yeah, and what you did there was become like preventative with your objections, right? Because most people are addressing objections reactively, like as they come up, which you do have to do sometimes. But if you can get really good at addressing objections in advance of the sales call, so understanding what the primary objections to working with you are, and then creating content around that. Like I know with health coaches, they get a lot of like, oh well, I have to ask my husband, right? Like
Right.
that objection, and so that objection could legitimately be like, yeah, I have to have a conversation with my partner, but it could also be an excuse, right? And you can definitely dive into that and figure it out and then create content around that. Like, great content for a health coach would be like what to do when he says no, or
Right.
how to convince or how to show my husband that like my health is really important to me, like
Hmm.
stuff like that, right? Because
Yeah.
you do that, like, I mean, you can address people's objections before they even get on the call with you, and then they have no objections. So
Yeah,
it's very
and
smart.
that benefits them even if they hire you, because that might come up after as well. So
Yeah.
it could be a resource where it's like how to talk to my partner about my infertility or whatever, right?
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
I have a course that teaches people how to lead their sales calls, and I have like a whole script for students to give to the client who actually does need to talk to their husband, because
Oh, wow.
your prospective client is not a salesperson like
Right.
you are, but they're not going to sell it like you could sell it. So
Yeah.
actually giving them a script to kind of follow, to actually speak with their husband or their partner or their wife, like whoever they're in a relationship with, because yeah, like they might not actually know how to speak about it, and there might be some shame around it too, because potentially they have tried something before, they've invested in a program before and they've failed, and
Hmm.
the partner is like, well, remember when you failed?
Yeah.
You're going to do this again.
Yeah.
So there's
No,
that
it's
too, right?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I love that. I love that. It's like the sales call can become part of your inspiration as
Yeah.
well as just a place to, get to know your clients and
Hmm.
meet people. You never know that
Totally.
person, it's not a good fit, but they could also refer you to someone else. Like I've had that happen where it's not a good fit, but then they remember you and they recommend you. And there's
Yeah.
just so many things that could happen. You
Yeah.
can't really know that.
Yeah, they can come back. Like I had one client come back like 2 years later. We had a
Right.
sales call, was probably not the right time for her. And then 2 years later, she's like, I'm ready. I'm like, oh, cool.
That's amazing. Yeah. 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 People can take time and that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Amazing. Oh my God. So much good stuff. I want to get on a sales call now.
I actually have a sales call after this.
Okay. So, where can people hang out with you more and find out more about this sales workshop that you have?
Yeah, so you can, the best place to connect with me, if you have any questions about this episode, you can shoot me a direct message on Instagram. My handle's at Kendra Perry Inc. That's usually where I'm hanging out. And the link to, I have a sales call workshop that brings you through my entire script. We got through about half of it in this episode. So it goes through the whole, like, how do you pitch? How do you address objections on the call? Like, how do you close the sale? That whole thing. You can find that in my Instagram bio. And I also have a podcast called The Wealthy Coach, and we talk a lot about mindset for health coaches, strategy. Sometimes we get a little woo woo. It's fun. So you can connect with me there as well.
Awesome. I will include all those in the show notes. And thanks so much, Kendra. This was fun.
Thank you so much, Cynthia.